Hi everyone, my name is Vanessa Valiuco and welcome to Personal Pans, conversations about belief, transformation, and all of the weird and wonderful things that we experience. Today's episode is with Mark Obscura, and I love this episode. I know I say it every time, but I mean it every time because wonderful people come on my show and talk to me about things that they love and things that they find really fun, and I'm just endlessly grateful and honored for that. This was a long conversation. We talked about cryptids, we talked about glitches in the matrix, we talked about the idea of consciousness and consciousness being a disembodied force being beamed into our heads. Mark shared some weird experiences with the Mandela Effect and the sighting that he had over a Florida water park. Just incredible. Ended it with a fun mentalism trick that just like made my brain explode in the best way. I really enjoyed recording this episode, and I hope that you enjoy listeing to it.
So how's the blood of your enemies? Does that invigorate you?
It's delicious. Yeah. I know one of my close friends got this for me for my birthday a couple of years ago and was like, you see into my soul in ways that no one else does. Thank you.
That's great.
Yeah. I know people don't expect it because when you wear like bright colors, they don't assume that you will also drink the blood of your enemies, but you know, there you go.
I'm not surprised based on the kind of goth comment you made a few days ago about the gothic, which I didn't realize you were into gothic music, but I wouldn't consider myself goth, but back in the day, you know, I got really into it. I didn't do all the makeup. I had naturally very dark hair, almost black.
Oh,
and I dressed in black, but I always dressed in black from even as a kid. I like black.
Yeah.
But Bauhaus, Sisters of Mercy, Atlantis Mox, even The Cure. I know they're a little commercial, but they were good. Susie and the Banshees, and then some of the more obscure that was around at the time.
Yeah.
And Roz Williams and Eva O, and don't know if you're familiar with them.
But, no.
And then I got into a lot of the more industrial music, Skinny Puppy, Hilt, and it's been too many years now.
I get it. So in the 90s, there was a local station here called Q101, and they used to have Zoltar's Industrial Zone. And on evenings and like Saturday nights, I think it started around 10. Most nights it started around 2 a.m. And so I would listen, you know, they had 9 Inch Nails, Skinny Puppy, KMFDM, like just that was the beginning of my industrial music obsession, which has continued to this day, because once you find something that like speaks to your dark soul, I think it just always stays with you.
Yes, absolutely. It's always Bauhaus is always on most of my playlist.
Amazing.
One song or another.
Of course. Yes. Yeah. When you love something, it's just there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
I remember as I've discussed this with different people over the years. It's very interesting. Our filters, what I look at it like the brain or the mind. We have these filters, things get stuck in the filter and that becomes you. And even as a small kid, I loved gothic horror movies.
Really?
Even like 5 years, 7 years old. I wasn't supposed to be watching this at 5 or 7 years old. My parents, you know, but I had way back then, I had a little black and white TV that was in my room.
Mm-hmm.
And I always got inspiration late at night, even as a kid, and I'd wake up, even if I went to bed at 9, you know, I'd wake up around 11. And luckily there was a station, Channel 2 back then in Miami, that would run all night. A lot of times they would play these old gothic horror movies, especially Friday and Saturday nights.
Yes.
And I would sneak it on, have gently close my bedroom door and sneak on the TV, a real low volume. And of course, the thing was only that big, so I'm 2 feet away from it.
Of course.
Watching, you know, Dracula, the Wolfman. Back then it was all the classics. Bride of Frankenstein, different things, you know.
Of course.
But it's weird. your personality is set at such a young age, you know. So
Yes.
Gothic was going to be a normal thing for me.
It's so funny you say this. I love this idea of like a filter and things getting stuck, right? Because the old Addams Family TV show,
Oh,
obsessed with it as a kid. I remember when it like went off a syndication of whatever network was playing it, and I was devastated because I tuned in every day during summer, like summer vacation, and I would watch that and watch it obsessively, and I loved it. Like it filled me with such joy as a kid, like this family, this Gothic family, these, you know, like women in long black dresses and like long black hair slinking around. So yeah, the goth thing was just there. And it wasn't something that my family was interested in or was into at all. But, and my mom, many things I've like been fascinated with over the years. And she's just always asks me like, where did this come from? I don't know. It's just in me. Like I'm attuned, right, to certain things.
well, I was the same with the Addams Family. In fact, Morticia was probably my first crush. Her and I forget the name of the vampire movie. It had Bela Lugosi, but it might have been something like Dracula's Daughter or something like that. Anyway, this very Gothic, elegant woman, whatever movie that was, I was in love with her, even as a little kid.
Of course.
And then at that time, or a little bit later, Dark Shadows was on TV.
Oh, yes.
And I was a Dark Shadows fan for a while, but the Addams Family was it. I liked the Munsters, but I liked the Addams Family a lot better. The Munsters had amazing cars. They had the Dragula, they had the main car, which were amazing. The house was really cool, but I love the characters of the Addams Family. I mean, Morticia was sexy, exotic, and everybody was just quirky in the right way.
That's it, exactly. Well, and two, I think it's kind of like the beginning of maybe an awareness of like authenticity, because to me they were like watching it back later as an adult to see if I still was in love with it. And one of the first episodes, Gomez and Morticia are fencing, and I just thought, oh yeah, this is perfect. This is a perfect television show. I still love it. And they're just living their lives. They're into what they're into. They think it's totally normal. It's normal for them. They clearly love each other. Like it's a warm, loving family home. They're just into weird stuff and have a lion. Like it's whatever. It's fine.
It's very encouraging in its own weird, quirky way.
That's exactly it, right? Like just again, you find you're weird and you find other people who are weird in the same way, and you can just enjoy yourselves and again be open to more things in life rather than say like, okay, I have to follow this life path. I have to do this job. I have to have a such and such partner or house or whatever. So
exactly.
Yeah.
You see it so much on Twitter. I don't see it in other social media platforms, although I hear other people complaining about Facebook and Instagram. And I guess I'm lucky in the fact that I really only see it on Twitter. Notorious for dogma of any type. You know, someone says, oh, I'm a witch. Well, now I have to fit into these little cubicles, these reality tunnels, as Dr. Timothy Leary would say, we're all in these reality tunnels. But or I'm a pagan, or I'm into the paranormal. We have to fit, or I believe in UFOs. So it's either this one or the dogma on Twitter is just psychologically it's interesting, but it's just astounding.
Yes. Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned this. So my background is in sociology and like a smattering of psychology. So I find it incredibly interesting when people, like you said, you're into these alternative beliefs, right? Alternative structures, but you're just taking the dogma of mainstream society and the rigidity and the structure, and you're imposing it then on your belief in UFOs or your belief in Bigfoot, any of those things. And why not break free of that and play with it and and I don't know, just play with those component pieces rather than just saying like, well, okay, so I believe in UFOs and UFOs are this, and these lights mean this, and disclosure is coming. And I trust all these ex-CIA guys who are telling us about, you know, breeding programs and things like that. Why not come up with your own ideas and theories, and B,
Mhm.
just question what people are telling you. You don't have to, I mean, you can be respectful of it when you're engaging with the ideas, but like push back a little bit and poke and ask some questions. I think that is valuable.
I've said this several times off and on through the last couple of years on Twitter, but part of the issue today is we don't have, so back in my day, we had Dr. Timothy Leary.
Mhm.
Think for yourself and question authority, the two big takeaways.
Yes.
Previously, it was Socrates. I mean, he basically was just quoting Socrates, really. But
Yeah.
today, we don't have anyone really doing that for the populace, you know,
Mhm.
inspiring them to quit questioning everything. Because even people that they think that they're questioning what they're really doing, adhering to it, you know, and
Yes.
icon. They come up with these icons. Well, here's my icon, and I'm gonna adhere to that dogma instead of really detaching and questioning everything. I've uh, I've always done that. Even I think in my early teens, I think I had a natural tendency just to kind of step back and, well, I don't know what I think about that. And
Yes.
and everybody else was jumping on one bandwagon or another. And I guess I came off a little bit weird because I wouldn't do that.
Right.
But
I know. I think it's hard. Again, I've always been that way too. And I don't like, again, I always attribute it to being an Aquarius, but it also could just be like my upbringing, like my, you know, Polish immigrants, kind of a little paranoid, a little questioning, just like this kind of attitude. And also that like being taught at an early age, if you don't believe in something but you have to do it, like if you don't like school but you have to get through school to get a job, just play along. You know, keep
Mhm.
I think it's maybe even like communist informed, like keep your brain to yourself, but present that you care about what people are talking about if it helps you get through. Again, like if you can
Mhm.
survive World War II with that mentality, that's what gets you through anything in life, right?
Yes.
But I'm not a joiner. I'm always a questioner, more now upfront about it, but always just in the back of my head, like, I don't know if I believe this. All right, all right. Because I think it's more interesting to question and to interrogate. I think you really get a sense of what your own ideas are as opposed
Right.
to what society has imposed. And I know we talked in a message before, this idea of like deprogramming. Like, what if you really believe something? Great, but have you questioned those beliefs? Are those yours, or is that something that society, your family, your Twitter community, whatever, has told you that you need to believe in order to belong?
Exactly. Hmm. Uh, I see it more and more today than it appears to be. I like to use English prime whenever I remember to do it, to take the dogma out of it. So it appears to be that way more and more. And it's a shame. That's going back to the old philosophy of know thyself. You know,
Yes.
you can't, it's hard to know yourself if you're so wrapped up with what everyone else thinks or believes. You need
Right.
that internal reflection. Um, so I'm not sure very many people these days actually know themselves. And that's kind of a shame.
I totally agree. And I think again, I'm 38, and I feel like I have seen a big shift in culture and television, in upbringing and communication during that time. You know, I didn't grow up with a computer in the home. I had one when I was in high school. So I got used to
Mhm.
interpersonal communication in person. Um, I also was part of that generation that still kind of ran around and played with their neighbors and played outside. So that's this whole other fun exploration kind of thing. Um, and 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 I feel like I've seen in the past, well, like couple decades, this kind of fixation on like on fan culture, and I kind of see fan culture as part of some broader psychological happening that I can't really put a name on, but just that people decide, okay, I am a fan of this, either a personality, a celebrity, a writer, whatever. I am a fan of this person. I believe everything that they say. Everybody in the community supports everything that this person says. We can't question it. Any critique, it means that you hate it, and then you're going to get ostracized from this community. And to me, it's more interesting and more nuanced. Say you like someone or you like their work, but they've done something that you're not particularly thrilled of, or you think there's some ethical, maybe iffy issues with that. I think saying both of them doesn't mean you secretly hate that person and want to destroy them. You actually want to critique their work so they continue to do better work because you actually like what they're doing. Critique is not a secret desire to murder somebody or destroy their career. It's like, hey, let's push back against this. Maybe this was a bad idea. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people just don't, they're too wrapped up into that worshiping phase. And to me, it is kind of, they're worshiping,
Yes.
which I've never been a fan of. Not that I've never had an icon or two, but even my icons, whether it was in psychology or music, I mean, I idolized Led Zeppelin, but not every single one of their songs is great. They have a couple that aren't that great. I mean, overall, I think they're an absolutely great band and fantastic musicians and music, but I'm not going to worship them as gods. And I see a lot of that. It's kind of a weird thought. I've wondered about this. Is within the astral realm, is there more weirdness going on now because of so much worship, so much idolizing, that those thought forms could be running amok in the astral, and who knows what vibrations they're shifting or damage they're doing.
Yes. Oh my God, I love it. I never thought about that. But yes, it's like the more worship, we're essentially creating these like egregores and these tulpas, and we don't even know that it's happening, but it does seem to be happening more and more. This fixation, this idol worship, and all of that psychic energy. Yeah, it's got to be wreaking havoc on the astral realm. It just, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it would.
Of course, yes.
So that could also be, if that's happening, that could also be affecting magical work here in what we would call the mundane or physical. That there's an old theory that magic, certain forms of magic, is the intention, the thought, the energy, sending that up and having it reflect back down to a materialistic sense.
Yes.
So who knows what is being affected at this point?
That's exactly it. Yes. Well, and that too, this idea of, again, it could be anything, right? Like, and we don't know, because I feel like, again, also like bringing in this idea of like interconnectivity on Twitter, on other forms of social media, more people can connect, have the same ideas, have the same fixations, and again, create that energy in a faster and a more significant way than before.
Exactly. Somewhat connected to that is, I used to watch the show Ghost Hunters, and I watched that for several years, even in the beginning when nothing was happening.
Sure.
It's it's like, well, something's going to happen, and then they reached the point where every episode stuff is happening. But anyway, they got to the point where I think it was a team in California introduced them to the flashlight technique, where you turn the flashlight on and you back it off just a hair and you leave it, and you ask the ghost or the entity, whatever you believe in, to affect it, and the flashlight turns on. And that was happening. And for me, I immediately thought, okay, maybe an entity is doing that, but maybe you are doing it. Maybe you are projecting the energy. Maybe there's some mechanism we don't even know about that's doing that.
Yes.
I found it very fascinating because it seemed to actually work a lot of times, but people love to put labels on things. And you say ghost, a lot of people immediately think of, well, someone who's passed over. I think in some cases that is likely. But I think in a lot of cases, there's something else going on. And whatever that is, it could be a whole cornucopia of different things that we don't understand,
Yes.
but we love to put those labels on. So anyway, the flashlight technique is interesting, but it goes back to kind of like, well, the energies in the astral now. Who knows what's going on? Well, who knows what's really going on in these paranormal investigations? What really, I have a theory that explains everything, and it's not new. I've believed in this for a long time because I've been researching the paranormal since really my late teens, and then got seriously into it in my 20s, and I'm a little bit older, so it's been many years that so I've had this kind of key concept or belief, even though I try to keep away from beliefs, but we're all guilty of it. And the interesting thing is that it would account for everything, every single thing. It would account for any paranormal experience, ESP, Bigfoot, UFOs, deja vu, the slider effect, the street light interference phenomena, 1111, which is interesting because I was seeing 1111 back in the mid 80s before I had a computer, and I thought it was my own private thing. And then around 1990 or 91, when I got a personal computer, it well, like, I guess it's not private anymore.
Yeah, right.
But, belief systems is tough to let some of them go.
That's it. Yes, right. Well, and this too, because I mean, I definitely am more of a, okay, maybe it's us, right? That we're so disconnected from, like you think of like kind of indigenous cultures, early human groups, more shamanic practices, a deeper understanding, a deeper connection with the earth, natural processes. And in order to create computers and all of modern society, we've kind of shut that part off or disconnected from it. And what if it's just keeps roaring back at us in the form of UFOs, in the form of Bigfoot sightings, in the form of 1111, whatever, as a reminder, like, hey, you're bigger than what you've been told you are. Like, you've been programmed to believe that you fit in this neat little box. You have these like a set series of paths that you can follow, but maybe there's something bigger out there that you're connected to, and that you are not even just connected to, that you are, right? That you are this thing, and you are, and it just keeps like knocking at the door, like, hey, will you just come play with us, please? Like, this is a part of you that you have abandoned that is really important. I don't know. That's where I'm at with it. Because I think, like, I'm pointing at my plants. I wasn't interested in plants much for most of my life. My mom has a green thumb. She's incredible with it. But with the pandemic, I started buying plants. Like, it just taking care of something made me feel better. And I just feel like my life is better and more full when I'm watering my plants, tending to my plants, talking at my plants, like, hey, what do you need? How are you doing? You feel good? And I think my magic has gotten better because of that, because I'm more connected to natural processes and tendencies and an awareness.
You can't see them, but I have my plants right there.
I love it.
I've got basil, or as my wife and I say, we make fun of words, so we call it basil to be somewhat posh.
Yes.
So I have basil right there. I have some, I don't know what this is, but I got one of those.
Beautiful. I love it.
So that's there. I have kind of somewhat of a cactus type of thing. I don't know what it is, and some orchids that like to tease me because they pretend they're going to bloom and then they don't bloom. One of them does, but I have 3 of them.
Sure.
So. And then over down there, I have a devil's trumpet.
Cool.
I bring it in every winter because it's tropical to die outside.
Of course.
This morning it was 27, so it would have frozen. Anyway, I cut it back, and then I bring it in and it starts growing back. So hopefully by springtime, it's ready to go and it blooms early. They get, I don't know if you're familiar, they get the very long, huge flowers. So you have
cool.
angel's trumpet, which is more of a bush or a tree,
Mm-hmm.
and devil's trumpet is in the same family, but it's a shorter bush. It usually only gets about 3 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
But when it blooms, the blooms are just amazing. It's incredibly toxic, so you have to be careful with it. It has I forget the drug in it now, but unfortunately, some people try to use the seeds or the leaves for drug use, and it's not good. It'll give you a heart attack and even cause psychosis. So it's
no. Yeah.
Anyway, it's so I'm very careful when I handle it.
Good. Yes.
But the blooms are just incredible. Some of the most amazing blooms you'll ever see.
Yes.
You can Google it and look for images on devil's trumpet. It's just
I will.
These amazing trumpet-like shape. They hang down, but and they bloom early in the morning. And if you're in an area, because it's usually late spring or summer when they bloom, if it gets too hot, they wither up probably by noon or 1 p.m.
Oh, okay.
You have to get out early and see them.
That's incredible.
But yeah, I understand the plant, they make you happy. So
that's it. Yes.
Professionally, on Twitter, my handle is just craziness. I'm an artist. Time I'm a mind reader, which I love, but my main profession is I'm a professional stress relief hypnotist.
Amazing.
So anything that relieves stress, especially today with a pandemic, we're in a pandemic. In case someone isn't aware of this, we're in a pandemic. Sorry, but
I mean, some people are acting like we're not, so I think it's important to bring that up.
Yes. And I don't want to really stay on this topic just because I practice what I preach, and I don't. The political landscape is crazy.
Yes.
So you have the political landscape, and then the pandemic. So it's very stressful for a lot of people. So my advice is anything that makes you feel better, as long as it's healthy. Physically, mentally, if it's healthy and it makes you feel better, then that's what you do. So yes, the plants, I completely understand.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the other part of that, and I very much practice this even years ago. I don't watch the news. It's tough these days because it pops up on your phone all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm very used to swiping it away. I watch mostly Amazon and cable, but if I were to watch a regular channel, I have the remote super handy.
Right.
The news stations they'll come on with a quick barrage of very negative stuff, trying to get you to watch them later at 9 or 11.
Yes.
And I have the mute button or the channel switcher that's handy. So I stay away from anything negative. It's a healthy way to do it. Also, it helps to retrain. You're reprogramming your mind.
Yes.
I think that's very important, because if you don't take control of your mind and you watch what you put in there, you're just allowing society and everyone else and everything else, culture, society, whatever, marketing, media, to program you as they want to.
Yes.
So I'm very into, I'm programming me the way I want to. If I actually do like the marketing of Lucky Charms cereal, then fine, but that's something that I allow.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
But otherwise, the news, unfortunately, there's always going to be incidents. There's always going to be conflict in the Middle East. There's always going to be turmoil here and there. But if you can't actively do something about it, why fill your mind with it?
Right.
People have to learn, or they should learn, that what they can take care of, that's what you focus on. If you can actually take care of something, focus on that. If you can't, let it go. Because it's causing you stress. and that stress causes health issues and everything else. So
Yes. Well,
let it go.
and the fact that you have essentially this professional background in stress relief hypnosis, and see what the effects of stress on the body and what people take on that they don't need to take on. I think it's really important in terms of programming, like you said, we're all subject to influences, but if you are able to kind of maintain yourself, the core of yourself, as you are engaging with all these things, again, you're choosing, okay, I want some Lucky Charms, right? Like sometimes I just want some Oreos and I'm going to go get Oreos. It's not because I've seen a commercial for it. Sometimes a commercial reminds me.
Those are a necessity. You need those.
Okay, thank you for understanding. It's a staple, my cabinet, yes. But just this, I love this idea that, again, talking about people not being conscious and conscientious of the influences that are coming towards them, because we are bombarded constantly with all of these ideas and all of this news, all these stories. And if you're not conscious and conscientious, it's easy to just absorb everything that's around you, especially in times of stress, with the pandemic, with absolute political craziness. Just, okay, looking for something to latch onto. And if something hits you enough, you'll just hold on to that because you want that sense of stability. But is it really authentic? Is it who you are? Is it true? That's something I think that I've always been interested in. Is this true? Is this me? And how am I choosing to engage in the world? I when I started my jewelry business years ago at this point, all it started with was me deciding that I was just going to believe that good things were possible. That was it. Because I said, raised by depressed Polish immigrants who'd survived a war, just this idea of collapse, right? I grew up in a sensibility of collapse. So I just said, okay, well, what if I change my expectation? I'm just going to believe that good things are possible. Not even that they would happen, just that they were possible. And then suddenly all of these incredible things started happening. And so that became this incredible feedback loop. I reprogrammed myself because I expected the possibility of good things. And then they just kept happening. So yeah, good things keep happening. It's pretty great.
And that's amazing. And it's good that you did that. Part of that, I believe, is allowing. And, you in a magical practice, I believe that's part of it, is not just the intention, the intent and all the work, but allowing. I think that's the missing aspect of a lot of people in magic. They don't realize that you have to allow. And that's the same in stress relief. I can teach the most amazing stress relief techniques to people. They have to be ready. It's kind of like a drug addict that wants to get off the drug. You have to want to do it. You have to be at that point where you allow it. So someone who's addicted to drugs and wants to go into rehab, it really helps if they reach a point where they really want that. With stress relief, it helps if the person realizes, hey, it's time to let that go. Let's use techniques to do that. The part of the problem is, now you kind of just short circuited and went to what you wanted to do to achieve, and that's fantastic. But part of the problem is that the synaptic firing within the brain, any repetitious pattern reinforces a pathway in the brain itself. And that pathway gets stronger and more entrenched with every time we do that action, or with repetition. So you have to create a different action and make that stronger. That's compounded by the fact that the subconscious mind is basically a 5-year-old child. And that 5-year-old child has a lot of fear, and it'll raise a red flag. Anything it senses is dangerous. Oh, look, here, pay attention to this. And that's why news is so negative, and people get trapped into the news, because that negativity grabs that 5-year-old child, and oh no, pay attention to all this. So it's tricky aspects for a lot of people. There's techniques they can use to definitely short circuit that. But it's good when you do it in a motivational way, like you did. You reach a point and you say, okay, hey, this is what I'm going to do, and let's see what happens. And I think you did it in a probably a very accepting way, an open way, and it happened. So that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Well, and you've, again, bringing up this idea of addiction, I think is an important point in terms of, because I think of my family and their fixation with negative thoughts and negative ideas. And I think in a weird way that also became an addiction of those heightened feelings because of all the trauma that they had experienced. They essentially needed these heightened experiences in order to feel something, or their perception that they needed to feel something. So it was just kind of reinforcing this idea, oh, terrible things happen, you have to be careful, people are always coming to get you. And terrible things have happened to me, and even since my grand experiment. But what am I going to choose to fixate on or to focus on in terms of those negative experiences? I don't tend to believe that things happen for a reason, but if you can find, or a lesson, but if you can find a lesson in something, I think that's incredibly valuable, because then it didn't happen for nothing. You learned something and you looked for the lesson in it. So it's more valuable to you because you did this thing rather than having something imposed on you. Again, that's when you're saying like people essentially in their recovery, they're like stress addiction recovery, they need to choose that. And
exactly.
And also, because what you're saying, like my choice to be a little more accepting, there was also a sense of surrender to it, right? Surrender and play. Well, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to put limits or impositions on what I think this thing should look like. There's just this emotional, mental sensibility that I'm chasing and pursuing right now. I'm just going to believe good things are possible. And then the way that took shape was, I couldn't have envisioned that, I didn't have the framework to envision something like that, but things just kept happening and unfolding. And then I could chase whatever was interesting to me in that. So
that's fantastic.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, very good. I teach, along with that, I teach people, this is a tough one. This is much easier said than done. And I don't mean it in a religious way, because some people do practice this in a very religious way. To me, it's just a understanding the subconscious mind. I teach forgiveness. And forgiveness, and I mean real forgiveness, not of a person, a circumstance, and yourself. If something's bothering you, forgive it, let it go. And it's not saying, okay, I forgive. It's really forgiving. It's tricky, it's tough, it's not easy. However, whatever is going on, if you forgive it, it takes all the ammunition out of the subconscious mind. That 5-year-old child cannot raise that red flag and keep pestering you with it if you forgive it, because there's no ammunition there. It's like, oh, well, that's okay, it's not a threat. But it's tough. It's one of the toughest things to do.
Of course.
But,
yeah, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt.
Yeah, that was it.
Okay. I was going to ask, in your experience, do you find that people have a harder time forgiving themselves than forgiving other people? Because intuitively, I think that, but yeah.
A lot of people do, because a lot of people, especially, I'm going to use a phrase by Robert Anton Wilson, Sambana, which standing for some but not all. And it used to be one of his key phrases, Sambana, because I don't want to take people and lump them into something, and I try to avoid the dogma. We all have a little bit of it. Unfortunately, I see it more in women than men. Women seem to be very self-critical, and maybe perhaps it's the way they're raised. They're raised to be this little princess, and maybe that particular type of pressure creates these aspects. But I do see it more in women than men in general, that very hard on themselves. And I think men, especially from my generation, were much better at just, fine, that's what you think, who cares?
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm very lucky because on Twitter, I see a lot of this and people just beating themselves up over silly things. I mean, there's some important things. If you want to beat yourself up, you can. I don't recommend it, but
Yes.
but if you want to, you left the dog outside and he froze. Now you have a dog sickle. Well, it wasn't a good thing.
Right.
But I mean, really silly little things they're beating themselves up over.
Yeah.
And it's kind of at a huge level. You see it quite a bit. I'm sure that you see it and everyone else sees it. And it's just take a step back, and how important is that in 5 years is nothing, even in a year. So let the little things go and learn how to deal with the bigger things. Have you ever seen the show Shark Tank?
Yes.
So I don't know any of those people personally. I don't know their backgrounds, if they're good people or not, but they're very successful with business.
Mhm.
And I would say life in general, extremely successful. And I have my Shark Tank type of policy that you focus on what you want to achieve.
Mhm.
And laser focused. And because that's what they do. They don't let someone else talk them out of things. They don't let themselves talk them out of things. They don't let themselves get super self-critical and destroy something.
Mhm.
They're laser focused. They go after it, and that's what they do.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of my philosophy. And sure, we can all be hard on ourselves. We can all be super self-critical. And it's times in my life back years when I was trying to be a professional artist, and my artwork, a lot of it was schizophrenic. Sometimes I thought I was one of the best artists in South Florida. Other times I thought it was complete junk. I mean, I would flip back and forth. And sorry, I don't know about I keep turning the phone down and it keeps coming back.
Oh, the tech goblins.
I've actually never had that happen before. I turn the volume down and that comes back up. But I'll keep it handy so I can swipe it.
Yeah, no problem.
If it was a paranormal investigation, I could say, okay, well, there's glitches like that happen, but
exactly.
but it shouldn't be happening here, I don't think.
Right. But again, if it's us, I'm enjoying this conversation. So clearly, like that energy, I think the energy of both of us might be spiking right now. And then the tech is just all deciding to do what it needs to do.
I've always had a little issue with technology. It's hard for me to wear a watch because they stop. And this was even back in high school. Now, granted, maybe the watches I had in high school were really cheap.
Sure.
Although my mom bought me one, it supposedly was good, but but they didn't last long. They always stopped. And just different things, mechanical things. So just one of those weird glitches. I think there's a lot of glitches, like Bigfoot, I think is a glitch, basically.
Really? Okay.
Well, basically, I think we're in a matrix, in a simulation, and a lot of this weirdness is just subroutines run amok, glitches.
Yes.
And I like the concept on one hand because it does allow for the explanation of absolutely anything.
Yes.
Homeostasis, personal homeostasis, those boundaries, it allows for that, it allows for any type of paranormal activity or anything else. 1111, et cetera. I really like the concept. And I've even now have stretched that to saying, I don't know if I believe this or not, but saying, well, we're jacked into the matrix from maybe 500 years in the future. We're playing basically an ARG.
Oh, yeah.
And during sleep, I guess sometimes maybe we get disconnected. And now I like the concept that maybe this isn't the only reality we're jacked into. that there
Mm-hmm.
could be multiple games that we're plugged into. And I really liked that whole concept because it could explain so much.
Yes.
Things that I could just say now. Someone mentioned something really weird, and I say, well, another ghost in a machine, another glitch, and
Totally.
little homage to the police, I guess, the ghost in the machine. But
Yeah.
so I love that. But to be completely honest about it, and I know
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people hate the simulation, although a lot of theoretical physicists are now getting on board with it. They believe we're actually in a simulation,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of them.
Right.
So I think it's fantastic. It explains everything. However, I could just as easily say, well, we are part of the dream of the giant cosmic space turtle. And that would
Right.
explain everything too. So
Yeah, right. Also true. But I'm not sure how I feel about the idea of a simulation, but I have been reading, oh gosh, I think it's Anthony Peake. I want to say he's done some work on this idea of essentially our brains are just a receiver for a consciousness outside.
mhm.
And that would explain, because nobody understands why the mind is a thing, why these neurons become a mind, which becomes a self, and a self that operates through the world. But the idea that if it's a consciousness that's being beamed from somewhere else into our brains, the brain is a receiver, it also makes sense that if somebody experiences brain damage and they have a personality shift, like, well, yeah, your receiver got changed.
Mhm.
So that, because again, consciousness is something I'm so fascinated by, why it happens, how we engage in the world, also the ways in which we can shape our own realities, like, and the limits of that. That to
Brain
me is
is
interesting. Yeah.
some scientists are now thinking it could be a quantum computer, which I like that aspect, but I like the receiver component because of my old metaphysical training. And there's an old saying and from years ago that I'm a spiritual being in a material
Mhm.
construct or a body or reality, but I'm
Yes.
really this other thing that's kind of plugged in, and that's not too much of a variation. Well, I guess the simulation is newer, so that'd be a variation of that. But
Mhm.
whether I'm a spiritual being plugged into this reality and I have this to be able to experience this reality,
Yes.
which is how my metaphysical teachings from years ago explained everything.
Mhm.
We're a multi-dimensional entity and we're in the material realm,
Mhm.
but that's not us. We're
Mhm.
in a whole bunch of other realms at the same time. Or you could take that to a more modern view and say, well, we're jacked into a simulation, and a real us, whatever that is who knows, another dimension in the future or whatever.
Right.
Um,
Yes.
I like all those trends of thinking that just going beyond the everyday normal thoughts.
Yes, exactly. Because I think it's, again, that's kind of why I started this podcast, because I was more interested in the question and the exploration rather than, okay, we believe this and this only, and that's what it is. Like I am much more interested in, and I'm much more excited by, I don't know what this is. Let's talk about it. These weird things keep happening. Again, the like the anthropological understanding of it, right? My women's studies background and this idea of qualitative interviews, interviewing people, talking to people. What are your stories? Because I'm less interested in the phenomenon and more interested in the human interaction with it and the experience of it. That's, I think, where the real kind of meat is, because our brains are limited, right? Either we're a simulation being beamed in, or we're just a three-dimensional construct or a three-dimensional awareness of a multi-dimensional being. Who knows? But what we think and all of our language about who we are and what this world is, we invented. So we're just limited structurally by all of that. So, okay, can we say we know anything? I think it's much more interesting to think about what things could be. Like that to me is always more interesting.
Well, I think it was Einstein that said that because all of our senses are so limited scientifically, it's impossible to understand reality.
Yeah.
We invent machines to expand upon that. X-ray, infrared, et cetera, all types of machines to see and hear and do things that we can't do, but we still don't know. That could be the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But our senses, a lot of people don't are not aware of this, and some people just kind of forget about it, but our senses are incredibly limited. Vision on the electromagnetic spectrum, it's
Right.
our hearing is extremely limited. Our touch is limited. In fact, if I have this correct, it is scientifically impossible for us to actually touch something. So our brain is creating that, because when you get down to a quantum level, there's fields.
Yes,
And
right.
so, two atoms can't touch, or you have a little effect there.
Exactly. Yes.
Things light up.
Mhm.
So it's actually physically impossible for us to touch something else.
Yes.
And so our brains are creating that sense of touch. And it's fascinating when you really get into it, how limited we are. So the possibility of what else can be around us, maybe even flowing right through us, other dimensions or whatever,
Yes.
vast concepts, because we're so limited in what we can perceive.
That's it. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and even science, now, because of my old upbringing with metaphysics, I believe in basically, the material realm, the etheric, the astral. There's 7 levels of astral, maybe not, and
Sure.
casual, mental on up. If that is true, our scientific apparatuses can only see so far in.
Right.
From the physical, definitely the electromagnetic, and a little bit into the quantum. But even that's questionable. The quantum's so weird and fuzzy and flaky that
Yes.
even that. But if you like stories, I have some good stories for you.
Of course. Tell me all your stories.
Well, we need 7 hours and 21 minutes for that.
Okay, this is a professional account, so I can keep recording. I'll release it in parts.
You're aware of the Mandela Effect, right?
Yes.
Quote unquote.
Yes, right.
Which I think most of it is just misremembering. I think that's most of it. However, there are some weird, quirky things, but I'll tell you my own personal one that still blows me away. And the problem is it's subjective. When you experience something, it's you.
Yes.
You can't prove it. You can't actually show. I didn't video record.
Right. Yes.
So at the old house, we downsized 3 years ago. We had a larger house, 2-story, and the upstairs bath was really great. The bathtub was enormous. I love that thing. And in fact, the children's book that I wrote most of that in the bathtub and on the front porch.
Oh, I love it. Yes.
With all types of exotic bubble baths. I had a shelf on there with my laptop and candles, and I spent a lot of time. But the shower was really nice. Here, I'm in a smaller condo and regular sized bathroom areas and showers. Well, it was a very nice shower, and that house was built in 1980. The weird thing is, I'm going to go off here just a minute.
Yeah, please.
The house had so much quote unquote paranormal activity. It was unbelievable. I used to tell people, if you don't believe it, come stay with me for a week, maybe 2 weeks, because within 2 weeks, you're going to experience something.
Wow.
But the house was built in 1980 and never had anyone pass away in it.
Sure. Yes.
You could say, I'm in North Carolina, in Charlotte. You could say, well, the Civil War, there's probably a lot of people that died. And then the Native Americans, the indigenous people, they could have had conflict and died. That doesn't explain things on the second floor. Walking around.
Right. Yes.
Or the time I was laying in bed and something went bam, bam, bam on the wall, and there's no tree there. There's nothing
Right.
there. And anyway, I was so tired. I just said some other time. But going back to the original story, but that's a weird thing in itself, that a house could be so haunted, quote unquote haunted, because it's a buzz term.
Yeah.
So whatever was really going on. But anyway, I was doing garden work because at that house I did most of the garden work. Here at a condo, I don't have to do that. I have a little outside garden, but mostly they have grounds people that take care of things with the condo setup. So anyway, was doing the garden work. It was summer. I was hot. I was sweaty. I was dirty. Had my garden clothes on. I went up to take a shower. Went in and got into the shower and turned the knob. Well, I tried to turn the knob, but wouldn't turn. I'm like, uh-oh, tried to turn it, it wouldn't turn. And I'm just messing with it. And I figured, well, sometimes to break something free, if something gets stuck, you turn it the opposite direction, then turn it. Sometimes that'll help. Turned it the opposite direction, it turned on. And I'm looking at this thing, I turn it back off. I do this like several times. It's like, what the heck? So I called down to my wife and I said, although I've been working in the front yard, I would have seen someone. I said, did you have a plumber come in? And Anita, my wife, says, no, what are you talking about? So I told her, and she says, well, she's used to weird. She's just like, okay, well,
Sure.
whatever.
Yeah.
But so anyway, all of a sudden, boom, the shower knob worked opposite than how it had worked we were in that house for about 14 years. So 14 years doing, even if thing, and which way to turn it, muscle memory.
Yes.
To do it properly.
Right.
It's like when you go to get into your car, you don't think about it. You click the remote, you go up, put the key in, you do whatever you got. You don't even think about that.
Yeah, no.
It's all muscle memory. So muscle memory should have turned that to the, the way it should have happened.
Of course.
And so something I can't explain. There may be a logical explanation. I can't think of any. And
right.
It would, if it wasn't for them, because I always try to look at things scientifically first.
Yes.
Someone sees an orb, and I'll tell you about an amazing orb if you want.
Someone sees please. Orb, yeah.
My first thing is, okay, dust. How was it recorded? Did you see it visually? What's going on? I'm a skeptic first, even though I practice magic and I'm very much think a lot of weird paranormal stuff is going on.
Yes.
A huge fan of John Keel, so I've read a lot of not just his works, but anything associated with some really great stories.
Yes.
So if it wasn't for muscle memory, I would think, I don't know, a mental glitch or what could it have been, but it's hard to discount. After 14 years, you're going to just automatically turn it the proper way.
Yeah, you're not even thinking about it because it's
not
been
even thinking.
Years of training. So you just,
So now when people mention the Mandela Effect, immediately I was going just to the thought of, okay, it's interesting, but you're just not remembering correctly. You have two memories confused or whatever. Yes. Now I'm like, I don't know. Let me think about it. And we'll go from there.
Exactly. That was my feeling about the Mandela Effect for a long time. Just, you're not remembering things. Because one of the big ones, either in the subreddit or on some website I saw, it was like definitely being spelled not correctly. And it's with an A in it. It's like, that's not even possible because it comes from Latin, finitus. Like, I know you just remembered that wrong. You learned it incorrectly. That's fine. The big one for me is the movie Shazam, because I didn't see it growing up. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
but I had a memory when, because like I have this memory because I again, my moon's in Scorpio, I remember anger. And so when Kazam came out with Shaquille O'Neal, I had a memory of, didn't they just release this movie 2 years ago with Sinbad? Like just being annoyed. I have a memory of being annoyed at that. And so then later when I found out the movie didn't exist, I was like, well, where did that anger come from? Maybe I invented it. Again, I'm always willing to accept things could be misremembered. I could be having delusions, whatever, trauma. Also, I've had a lot of weird experiences. I always lead with skepticism. I think it's important to question. But when you have these like very strange, specific things happen, and again, like you're saying, muscle memory, you're just not going to switch that off one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so weird. Shifted into another dimension, Mandela Effect.
Right.
The circuits got confused, plugged into the matrix or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. They switched
I'm
one number.
I'm gonna drive that matrix thing into the ground, especially with the new movie coming.
That's it. It's perfect, right?
But I'll tell you another one. I
Yeah.
almost forgot about this. It's minor, but it's very interesting.
Mhm.
Anita and I, we rewatched. We had seen it a couple years ago, and then maybe 5 years on back. And now we just watched it last night, and I lost the name of it. Mr. Megorium's Magical Emporium.
Oh, okay.
Something like, it's a delightful movie, mostly for kids, but a delightful movie.
Yeah.
About a magical toy shop.
Oh, cool.
And I love those whimsical movies. So anyway, we watched that. We started it off, and we didn't recognize the movie, and we're thinking, is there a second one? Are we watching a second one? And we got about 15 minutes into it because we didn't recognize any of it. And we're like, well, this is not what we remember. This must be a different movie. So I paused the movie, I got the phone, and I looked it up. And there actually is a second movie, but it's not these people. This is the original movie. So we watch, and I would say probably about half of the movie made sense. The other half of the movie, we're scratching our heads like, what the heck happened here? That's not, and it only had been maybe, I say 2 years, maybe 3 years that we had seen it, but that's not that long.
Right.
I'm getting older, but I'm not that old. Hopefully.
Exactly.
Oh, by the way, do you have the Brad Pitt filter? Zoom for
sure.
Matthew.
I'll do this in post. Yeah, don't worry.
Okay, Matthew McConaughey.
Okay, perfect. Great. I'll make that happen.
So yes, that's another. Now, is that a Mandela effect? Is it just two people? I don't know how it happened with two people. It's not necessarily paranormal, but it's weird.
It's weird.
It's weird that we watched that movie not too long ago. Love the movie, had it on our list to rewatch.
Yes.
At holiday time, we have certain movies we like to rewatch, not the same ones every year, but like every third year.
Yes.
Arsenic and Old Lace.
Love that movie. Yes.
Great movie. Harvey.
Yes.
And To Kill a Mockingbird, and just a couple different movies. And so this was on the list. And along with one of my favorites, Harold and Kumar's 3D Christmas, very profound. So very. So I don't know what, but we were so confused that I actually stopped the movie, looked it up on the phone, and nope, this is the original, because the remake that came out a little bit later had completely different people in it. But just. So the Mandela effect, not sure exactly what's going on. I do think the most of it is just misremembering.
Yes.
But with that shower, that's kind of opened my eyes that there might be some more glitches going on than we realize, whether it's a stimulation or whether it's something else. Maybe we keep shifting dimensions, that we're not always into the same dimension, and
Yes.
maybe all of us don't shift together. Whether it's an upgrade, one theory is when the matrix upgrades, things change.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen to everyone because we don't all get the same upgrade at the same time.
Of course.
However, we're plugged into it, or it
Yeah.
could be a dimensional reality.
Yes.
The other thing is perhaps we don't even understand reality at all. That reality isn't anything like what we think it is. That we're experiencing this, but
yes,
it's not anything like what we really think.
Yes. Yes.
Then that's scary because that, even though that could be amazing, that kind of leads me into a H.P. Lovecraft scenario where, oof, that could be really scary.
Of course, yes. Well, you don't know what's out there then, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I'm not as, maybe because I haven't thought of the H.P. Lovecraft angle yet, but I'm not as scared of this idea that we don't necessarily know what reality is, because just from my background doing social science research, like even the choice of choosing a measure to measure data is a limiting factor. So you're like, the idea of objective truth, objective reality is really an illusion, because what you measure, how you measure it, determines what data you even look for. You know, your hypothesis determines what data you look for. So anything else could be affecting things. If you haven't factored that in, you don't know. There could be some other external thing that is affecting all of your results, but you're not looking for it, so you don't see it. So you're making connections between other variables. So I'm a little more comfortable with that. But again, if there's some dark horror, eldritch horrors out there, that's a little more terrifying.
Well, I on a serious note, you know, our Voyager spacecraft years ago, they had these little plaques on them that we sent out in space that kind of had our address and,
Yes.
you know, described us as humans in a little bit. I think that's a very bad idea. The prevalent life forms on planet Earth are insects and viruses or microbes.
Yes.
Insects don't care so much about feelings or personality or your lifestyle. They're going to do what they're going to do.
That's it.
So
Yes.
now maybe that's not, you know, the saying as above, so below, you know, macro and micro kind of reflected. Now maybe that's not really the case, but if you get out there and you find life, very likely it could be insectoid.
Right.
And it may not have any feelings or emotions that represent what we have.
Yes.
And it may not care whether we live or die.
Yes, exactly. I think that's a good point. Yeah, because again, it's like this feeling. I mean, I guess I respect hope to a certain extent, but again, if you're beaming your cosmic address to potentially malevolent forces out there, and just the unfeeling, a complete lack of empathy forces out there, that's probably not the best idea or plan. Like maybe indicate that we have we can protect ourselves with weapons. Like we come in peace, but if you come for us, we'll end the war. You know, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I have a sonic screwdriver. It's plastic, but but you know, I'll point it at them. We'll see.
Yeah, exactly. They might have an aversion to plastic. We could win the war that way.
Or like H.G. Wells, they just come here and catch. Well, if they come here now, they're going to get COVID. So.
Oh, totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll
Omicron.
take care of it.
That's our self-defense. Exactly.
Well, I'm pretty optimistic. I think I do think there's intelligent life out there just for the size of the universe. I mean, it's really impossible to visualize how big it is. The cosmos is just absolutely immense. And so to me, mathematically, there has to be a ton of life out there. The thing is that the distances between us and whatever is so vast.
Right.
I mean, even at light speed, if you could develop technology at light speed, it's just so vast.
Right.
I kind of like the John Keel's take, and he wasn't the only one, but where the ultra terrestrials is kind of a multi-dimensional type of thing. The things are flowing in and out from,
Mhm.
you know, and that's for me, Bigfoot, shifting just a little bit here, Bigfoot, me personally, I could be off on this.
Yeah.
I doubt there's an actual physical
Mhm.
animal like a dog or a cat that we call Bigfoot.
Right.
By this time, I think we would have found remains, bones, dens, or whatever. I mean, we can really authenticate.
Yes.
Not just for a book to be published with no proof, you know.
Uh-huh.
And I could
Yes.
be wrong, but I can, and to this, some people would find this just as crazy as my, you know, my view, just as crazy as anything else. But popping in and out, phasing
Yes.
in and out of other realities, considering we don't even know what reality is, to me is
Yes.
much more realistic.
Yeah.
You know, Joshua Cutchney has a book where the footprints in, and
Yes.
it is common in Bigfoot sightings that you find the footprints and nothing else, and well, where'd they go?
Yeah, right.
You know, if those are
Yeah.
actual credible footprints,
Yes.
where did that entity go, whatever it was?
Yeah.
I am fascinated with the aspect of Bigfoot and large cats and dogs with glowing red eyes. You know, sometimes Bigfoot is reported as having those glowing red eyes or orange eyes,
Oh, okay.
just like
Yeah.
phantom dogs and cats
Mm-hmm.
are like some of the weirdness of Point Pleasant. And
Yes.
it's weird that so many of these things will occasionally have that tendency, the glowing eyes and the smell of sulfur.
Yes.
Weird stuff. But anyway, it could be a part of coming in through another spectrum or reality or
Yeah.
whatever.
Absolutely.
I'm just guessing though. So
Right. Well, and I think
well, I can state it on Twitter and then it's real.
yeah. And then you just have to create a hashtag for it, and then you'll have a whole following. You'll have a subreddit
Yeah.
soon enough. It'll be a whole thing. Yeah. So
But I'm sure you've I think you have a similar belief in that.
yeah.
I think, I'm not sure.
Yes. I think that I read Flatland, you know, when I was younger. I love surfing through hyperspace. There's this idea of like multidimensional. Again, we're living in a reality that has more dimensions that we can perceive. And so
Right.
of course we're only going to see, you know, in surfing through hyperspace, I forget the name of the author, but he talks about this idea that we're only, if we're experiencing entities that exist in higher dimensions, all we ever see are three-dimensional cross sections of those higher dimensional entities, which to me makes sense, and which is why some people see Bigfoot, some people see angels, some people see fairies. Like we're limited by our perceptions, but those could all be different aspects of some greater ultra-terrestrial multidimensional being that is trying to interact with us, but also doesn't necessarily know how. It's like us trying to talk to ants, you know, like what do you communicate to them? Like they have a complex society, they're going around doing their business, doing their thing. You can't talk to them, you know, you can give them some sugar from time to time. That's about it.
Yes. Well, I if that's the case, I hope they figure things out, because it's the trickster component of all this is outlandish, you know, it's just over
Yes.
the top.
Yes.
When you look into what seems to be very credible reports, and even if only 10% of these reports are credible,
Mhm.
there's so many people that not just John Keel, but tons of others that have interviewed people who have had just all these weird encounters with other beings.
Yes.
Some of them are completely just bizarre, that don't make sense at all. There's one about, I can't remember the details now. I forget the name, but they call it the ghost clown that these kids encountered, because it was kind of a robotic clown, but it kind of hinted that it was a ghost. It could have been an alien. The thing was so bizarre,
Yeah.
that story. I'll try to track it down for you later. I'm sure that
Please.
some people listening to this will recognize it right away. I've just
Sure.
kind of, that cell burned out. I forget the name
Yeah.
of it.
It's okay.
But there's so many accounts of these just bizarre entities that do not seem to make any sense in a logical way.
Right.
And I wonder if, okay, if it isn't glitches from assimilation or in the matrix, if it isn't subroutines just kind of going crazy,
Yeah.
then perhaps what kind of flows in and flows out, perhaps it's similar to the astral. Perhaps it's, you know, some form of thought form, or since we don't really know what reality is, not, could be thought form, or it could be generated by something else that we don't understand.
Yes.
But maybe it wasn't intended to make sense. Maybe it's just, you know, a combination just thrown together that
Yes.
oops, that flowed in and flowed out.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm
Yeah.
thinking right now. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no,
I was
go
just gonna
ahead.
say, yeah, sure. Have you seen Contact?
Yes.
Yes. So just this idea of
Yeah.
the alien showing up to her as her late father, right? Like maybe these things that are trying to communicate with us are just picking out thoughts from our head, and like, or ideas in culture, and like doesn't know that if it mashes them up and turns it into a weird ghost clown, we're all gonna freak out. Right? Like, it's like, oh, they're obsessed with ghosts, and some people like clowns together. This has to be perfect, right?
But nobody in their right mind likes clowns. That's
Okay, thank you. I feel the same way.
I had a very profound sighting roughly about 30 years ago. Uh, and it was amazing and disappointing at the same time, because it didn't solve anything for me.
Yeah.
It didn't bring a bigger awareness. It's just a mystery.
Yeah.
I think a lot of what this is, that's kind of what it is. At least it was very beautiful. What two friends and I were at a water theme park in South Florida. That's long gone now due to a hurricane. But we were there, it was in the summer, and we were on the top level of this ride that you get up there, and then it's I think they called it the cannonball, but I'm not sure. It's kind of almost straight down and shoots you off.
Yeah.
Once you go down, I think, you know, it's a long time ago. I think you're going about 55 miles an hour. Just
God.
high, you had to go like this and
Of course.
hydroplaning down. And it was a very popular day. So the line to get up there was maybe a half an hour long. You know, and you get up, I forget, it's 4 or 5 stories high up there, climbing the ladders. Then you're on this big area that it has, you know, kind of bars around it so you don't fall off. You can go up and look over, but you're up pretty high. But then you got to get across the line, and it's maybe 50 feet by 50 feet. I'm not really sure, but there's quite a line. Once you get up there, then you're in another line to get over and go down.
Yeah.
And then it takes time, because when someone goes down, they have to wait for them to go all the way down and go to the end, into the pool and away, so that the next person doesn't hit them.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a very time consuming thing. So we did this, the 3 of us, and we're standing in line. We're about halfway standing in line. I don't remember who saw it first, but one of us kind of looked up and over, and we were just drawn to this. I think we stepped out of line without even thinking and walked over to the edge, and we're looking at it. So up in the sky, I would say probably about the distance of a football field up,
Mm-hmm.
is this huge prismatic, it looked kind of like a figure 8 rainbow. And then but kind of compressed. And then when you really look at it, you could barely tell it was in a sphere,
Oh my
a
God.
transparent sphere. You could just barely see the edges of
Yes.
it. And that rainbow in there, we're looking at this thing just kind of, I think mesmerized, really,
Of
for no other word,
course.
just
Yes.
completely mesmerized. And we, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes we're looking at this thing.
Mm-hmm.
I personally thought it had intelligence. I just got the sense that it had
Yes.
intelligence. And so it just stayed in shape. It was mostly a blue sky. There were some little white
Mm-hmm.
puffy clouds here and there,
Yeah.
and they were drifting with the wind. So there was wind, there was motion with them, but this thing was just hovering,
Yeah.
didn't move. And then slowly it just faded away. And then it was
Yeah.
gone. And I remember thinking at the time, I remember thinking, well, what did we just see? Is this an extremely rare natural phenomena, an
Right.
atmospheric
Yeah.
phenomena that it just, and I remember to this day, I was thinking scientifically, okay, to make a figure 8, you need an updraft, you need a downdraft, you need a cross draft, another draft to get it
To
to
do
do the
that.
figure.
Yes.
And maybe there's something that I haven't thought of. The other thing was I was thinking, well, a lot of people would say this is a UFO.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was thinking, you know what? You go back a couple hundred years ago, a lot of people would say this is an angel.
Yes.
And because it was beautiful, absolutely beautiful, just
Yes.
prismatic. And so to this day, I don't know what it is. But
Yeah.
here's the weird thing. We backed up, we turned around, and to the line that we had stepped out of, that we had spent like 40 minutes up to get on that
Yeah.
ride, the darn ride.
Yeah.
We turned around. There was a gap in line for big enough for the 3 of us, because the part of the line had moved forward, and this person had turned around and they were talking to their friends, and the line ended up separating. We stepped in, and they turned back around, and they never realized that, and we just flowed. It was like it was meant to be.
Yes.
And the other weird thing is, as we're looking at this, occasionally we would look around and we looked down, because it was packed.
Of course. Yes.
Water theme park in Florida in the summer was packed. There were hundreds
Yes.
of people. We're looking at, nobody is looking at this thing, just the 3 of us.
Oh my
And
God. Yeah.
and we didn't think to we were so mesmerized, we didn't think to say to other people, hey, look at this,
Of course.
it's like our brain just kind of clicked off, and we're just
Yes.
don't know what it still fascinates me today. I would say, a very profound moment in my life, but it'd be kind of a shame if it turned out it was actually just a really rare weather phenomenon.
Right. Exactly.
I have researched it. I have looked into it. I
Yeah.
can't find anything that would logically make sense.
Yeah. I've never heard of anything, any weather remotely resembling that. So I think, I don't know, I tend to think that, like, when we see strange things like that, when we have weird experiences, it's a communication with whatever, but that we're getting a sense of, again, the reality behind reality. And whether it's telling us that this is a simulation, this is a glitch, or whether it is something that exists in higher dimensions and it's communicating with us in a thing that we can see, again, it's a communication. And that to me is really beautiful, especially when it's that profound, because when you have those experiences, you know that, oh, this is special. People don't experience this all the time. This might be one of just a handful of times I will experience something like this. But it gives you that perspective shift on what reality is, or what reality could be, that I think Again, our society doesn't really allow for that, but I think those moments are incredibly valuable.
It's these experiences that I think everyone has. I think some people just shut them out. I think we all have one type or another or various, but some people like you and myself and different people we're connected with on social media are very open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people just aren't open to it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, this isn't what I'm focused on right now, and just kind of blow it off. The interesting thing is, a lot of those people, you get them drunk and they'll tell you stories.
That exactly.
But otherwise, I don't really go into that area. I don't believe they get them
Yeah,
drunk enough. They're like, well, there was this one time.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's
I
a really
had
good
this.
point.
It's good when you have them these experiences that are backed up by other people. Like in this case, I had two other people.
Absolutely.
There
Yes.
was an experience I had years ago. There was an art gallery in Miami Lakes, Florida,
Okay.
and I became friends with the owner. She was an older lady, just a really nice person to talk with, and it
Yeah.
was a good art gallery.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm a little bit of a snob with art, and I like
Sure.
good art.
Yeah.
This was a good gallery, had
Yeah.
wonderful art. And she was in the Rosicrucians.
Mm.
And so she had a person come from the Rosicrucian order in California to give a lecture. That
Mhm.
was one good thing about South Florida back in the day, is you had everything,
That's amazing.
witches,
Yeah.
pagans, Buddhists, Rosicrucians, people in the
Yeah.
OTO, you name it.
Yeah.
Of course, you had Santeria and everything there. So she had this guy come to give a lecture, and that art gallery was very long and narrow.
Mhm.
And he was in the far end, and I was maybe 3/4 of the way back, and it was pretty full. A lot of people were just standing, and he was in the far end, but he was up on some type of pedestal, so he was
Mm.
up a little bit talking. It seemed like a really nice guy.
Yeah.
At some point, I started to feel weird energy, not negative or anything, just like
Mhm.
like energy kicked in, and it was just kind of like buzzing. And I kind of thought that he was experiencing the same thing, but he kept going. And I thought, maybe my blood sugar is dropping. I don't remember what I thought at the
Yeah.
time, but I was kind of going through a little bit on
Mhm.
and down. I talking to a lady in the gallery, and she said, what was going on with you two? And she was off to the side. She was off to the side tending to, she had a table with drinks and
Yes.
um, I think chocolates or something. And I said, well, what do you mean? And she goes, well, I was watching, and there was these like electrical current going back and forth between you and him. And I'm like,
Oh
whoa.
my
Uh,
God. Yeah.
and so it appears it appears that she actually could visually see what I was
Yeah.
experiencing.
Right.
Um, I still don't know what that was,
Of course. Right.
um, but it's good when, regardless of what it is, it's good when you have validated from someone else that
Absolutely. Yes.
something was going on.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Because again, when it's just you could just say, all right, maybe I was stressed out about something. Maybe my brain, my synapse is misfired for whatever reason, tired, over
Mhm.
caffeinated, one of those things. But when somebody else with their own brain and is perceiving this thing, and especially when you're having this physical experience of it, and she's visually seeing something without knowing like what you're experiencing in that same moment, I think that's incredibly powerful. Again, it's the stories like, okay, do we have corroboration here? That is something to pay attention to, like what's going on here.
It's the only thing is I love the corroboration and validation. The only thing is it kind of leaves you right where you were, which maybe is the fascination for all this anyway.
Yes.
Maybe if there's an old joke about this conspiracy nut that died and went to heaven. He's at the pearly gates, and St. Peter, he's up there ready to be admitted, and he says, "Oh, before I go in, you got to tell me who really shot JFK?" And St. Peter says, "I'm sorry, I can't tell you that." He says, "Okay, well, what about Bigfoot? Is it real or not?" "I'm sorry, I can't tell you that." And then, "Okay, what about UFOs? Are they aliens? Is it the government?" And St. Peter says, I'm sorry, I can't tell you any of that." And this guy says, "But I don't understand. Here I am at heaven's door, and you're not going to tell me about any of this." And St. Peter says, "Well, if I told you, it wouldn't be heaven."
Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Now, I don't know, for me, the afterlife, if it's just being unplugged and plugged into another reality or what, but
Yeah.
I don't think I'll see St. Peter, but maybe maybe a puka. I don't know.
There you go. Exactly. Maybe you'll see Harvey.
Yes, oh, that'd be great.
Yeah, right.
So
All right.
back,
Oh, go ahead.
you have obviously memories of stories of World War II.
Yes.
And what color were the battleships in World War II?
Oh, I don't know.
Basically gray.
Gray. Yeah.
So for years and years and years, everything I saw was always gray. Now, this is going back to the Mandela Effect. There's
Yes.
something called Dazzle Ships that were brightly colored and painted like, I don't know, maybe Jackson Pollock painting or something, with stripes and cubes and all that. And now you can actually Google this and get images of Dazzle Ships. I never heard about any of that.
No.
In
What?
Pearl Harbor, yeah, it's crazy stuff. And they're weird looking ships too. In Pearl Harbor, I think, unfortunately, about 2,000 people
Yeah.
roughly died in that event.
Yeah.
Off the east coast of Florida, roughly 5,000 people died in attacks during World War II. German submarines, etc. Now you can research this today and track down some information. I never heard about any of this.
I've
So,
never heard about that.
so I'm just wanting to throw some more out there with the Mandela effects,
Oh
this
my
weird stuff.
God. Yes. Yeah, I was pretty sure, ships were just metal, like you said, just gray, not fancy, and never heard about anything happening off the coast of Florida. I feel like my education wasn't bad either. Like, I feel like that would have come up. You know what I mean? Like, here's something that happened to
Oh,
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, for a while, the History Channel, that's all they ever showed was World War II stuff before it turned into UFO Skinwalker and Oak Island.
Exactly. Ancient aliens.
Ancient. I'm getting ancient just watching Ancient Aliens. So actually, I did watch the first season, I believe, but then
Yeah.
the best thing about it was his hair.
Yeah, that's the most compelling part of that show, definitely.
Yeah. So anyway, still it goes back to misremembering, wrong information, or just what the heck.
That's it.
But,
Yes. Yeah. I don't know. Again, I grew up watching Sliders, so I'm more inclined to believe in like shifting realities. And sometimes you're conscious of it, and sometimes you're not. And maybe universes get merged. Like, who knows what could be happening? But
yeah.
Again, I got kind of given this idea early of parallel realities and moving between them. So my sense
I
of
love that show until they got into the Nazis.
Oh, I know. Why did they ruin it?
And it seemed like for years everything always went to the Nazis, and
Yes,
I was so sick of it. And
of course, yes.
Anyway, I did really like that show until
Yes.
Because part of it is it when that happens, it takes all the exploration out of the show.
Yes.
Now it becomes a conflict show. It's like Star Trek with the Klingons,
Yes.
it becomes, that's the focus instead of exploring. And
Yes.
I like the exploration aspects of it.
Exactly.
Um,
Yes. Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
but
Exploration.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
good show for a while. I think it was based on, I'm not going to get his name right. So, Michio Kaku.
Oh,
Um,
yes. Is
I
it based
think
off
that
of
was
his work?
based, I think so.
Oh,
I think
awesome.
so.
Oh my God, cool. Great.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, good show. I liked it. Of
Yeah,
course, I've liked
absolutely.
some really stupid shows too, like the Time Tunnel back when I was a kid.
Oh, I've never even heard of that.
Oh, I don't. It probably hasn't held up well.
Okay. I'll probably still look it up anyway, because why not?
The Addams Family has, but
Yes. Yeah.
probably not the
Exactly.
Time Tunnel.
I mean, that's okay. Sometimes when we're young, we love things that, they're like sad cases when you get older. It's like, oh yeah, that was a kid brain that loved this thing.
They helped inspire, the Addams Family helped inspire the book I wrote, the
Oh
children's book.
yes.
So a lot of
Yeah.
the characters are kind of that type of quirkiness.
Yes.
But I stuck about literally probably 80 or 100 Easter eggs in that book.
Mhm.
So I like it for that too.
Of course.
But
Yes.
I would like to do, because it's so fun, and then let
Yeah.
you enjoy your day.
Yeah.
I would like to do just a little mind reading, quick little thing if we could,
Okay,
because it's
sure.
super fun.
Okay.
Now, this is something, I'm going to tilt this down just a little bit so I can, because I've got a, okay. This is something that was developed by a very famous mentalist,
Mhm.
Max Maven. I think he's out of New York. Anyway, he's been around a long time,
Okay.
created some amazing effects, and this is one of his.
Yeah.
But I love it. I actually carry these 4 cards with me wherever I go, because I do this a lot for waiters, waitresses at restaurants and different things.
Yes.
So this is going to require your imagination.
Okay.
So imagine that I have 4 cards.
Okay.
Right now you're at 100% because I have 4 cards.
Yes.
Imagine that I have the 4 queens.
Okay.
You're at 100% because I have the 4 queens. You're doing great.
Great.
Imagine that I take 2 of the queens out.
Okay.
Did I take out the red queens or the black queens?
Oh, I saw the Queen of Hearts and the Queen of Spades.
We're going to go with red or black.
Okay, let's do red then.
Okay, so one of them,
Yes.
I'm just going to slide back in.
Okay.
The other one, I'm going to flip over and slide in near the bottom.
Okay.
So now one of those red queens is face up.
Okay.
Did I turn over the Queen of Hearts or the Queen of Diamonds?
I'm going to say Queen of Diamonds.
You're going to say Queen of Diamonds.
Yes.
So all this time I've had 4 cards.
Yes.
And I haven't done anything except imaginary. I did imagine an imaginary way, slide them out. I'm going to separate them here. I'm going to do it carefully so you can tell that I'm not doing any weird fancy moves. I'm going to separate them.
Oh my God! What?
Now, bicycle cards come in typically for years. They came in a blue back and a red back.
Yeah, exactly.
And I knew that you were going to choose the Queen of Diamonds. So if I can pull this out, so it's in a red back. In fact, I knew that you were going to choose the Queen of Diamonds. So I didn't even bring the other cards.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I love that effect.
Oh my God, that is incredible.
Well, I'm glad you enjoyed. I love it. That's considered pocket mentalism, something you just can carry around and I love that. So thank you, Max Maven, for that.
Oh my gosh, exactly. Yes. Big thanks to Max Maven and to you. That was amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. It's going to carry that magic
Oh, it was
with
a
me.
pleasure. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much for listening. Again, if you want to keep up with what's happening with Personal Pans, you can follow Personal Pans at Personal Pans on Twitter and on Instagram. You can find me on Twitter. I'm always on Twitter at Kali Butterfly. It's Kali Butterfly. And man, I just hope that you have an incredibly playful and curious day.